The unexpected discovery. Scientists thought they had the history of Mount Sinai figured out until a group of atheists stumbled upon a shocking discovery in the heart of Saudi Arabia. What they uncovered could rewrite everything we know about the Bible's most famous location, and no one saw this coming. For centuries, the Sinai Peninsula has been the established location of Mount Sinai, the place where Moses received the Ten Commandments. It's a part of biblical lore that has influenced generations of pilgrims, historians, and archaeologists alike. But recent events have turned this long-standing belief upside down. A team of secular researchers, led by self-proclaimed atheists, ventured into the deserts of Saudi Arabia. They weren't looking for God, they were just following evidence. But what they found has the world questioning everything we thought we knew about the true location of Mount Sinai. The search begins. The journey began not with a grand mission to find a biblical site, but with an academic pursuit, the documentation of ancient trade routes and tribal movements in the Saudi Arabian desert. This group, skeptical of religious claims, was focused purely on historical research. They received special permits from the Saudi government to explore remote and previously restricted areas. Little did they know, their search would uncover far more than they could have ever anticipated. At first, their findings seemed like any other archaeological discovery, small, seemingly insignificant markers of ancient civilization. But as they ventured deeper into the vast, unforgiving landscape, something extraordinary caught their eye. A mountain, isolated and hidden among miles of arid land, stood before them. It didn't look like much at first, but the peculiar features on its peak and base sparked an unexpected curiosity. As they examined the site closer, they couldn't ignore the striking similarities between what they were seeing and what the Bible had described about Mount Sinai. But it wasn't just any mountain. This peak had signs of something far more significant. A blackened top, scorched by what seemed like an unnatural heat. Was it truly the mountain that Moses once stood upon? Could this really be the legendary Mount Sinai, the place where Moses had once stood before God in flames of fire? A closer look at the evidence. The evidence that began to emerge was startling. One of the team leaders, a European geologist, had spent years studying ancient rocks and erosion patterns. But what he saw here was unlike anything he had encountered before. At the peak of the mountain, he found what appeared to be burnt rock, a kind of scorching that didn't fit any natural explanation. There was no volcanic activity in the area, no signs of a wildfire, yet the rocks were charred, as if they had been subjected to intense, concentrated heat. But that wasn't all. As they moved down the mountain, the team stumbled upon a split rock, unmistakably worn by water erosion. This detail stood out to them not because of its rarity in a desert, but because it mirrored the biblical account from Exodus 17:6, where Moses struck a rock at Mount Sinai and water gushed forth to quench the thirst of the Israelites. In a desert where no such rock should exist, here was the undeniable evidence of erosion from flowing water, proof that something extraordinary had happened at this location long ago. But yet the secular researchers didn't expect to find more. They couldn't have prepared for what came next. The golden calf discovery. As the team ventured further into the desert near the base of the mountain, their curiosity led them to an extraordinary find. A massive stone structure, circular in shape, lay in ruins, partially buried beneath the sand. It seemed out of place, almost like an ancient altar. Nearby, carved into the stone, were depictions of bulls. Not just any bulls, but the kind often associated with ancient rituals and worship. The researchers, with their secular mindset, initially dismissed the discovery as nothing more than an ancient cult site, something typical of ancient civilizations. However, for those familiar with the Bible, the imagery couldn't be ignored. In Exodus 32, while Moses was on Mount Sinai, the Israelites grew restless, and in his absence constructed a golden calf to worship, provoking God's wrath. Could this site be the remnants of that infamous biblical event? Was this the exact place where the Israelites strayed from faith, creating the golden calf and falling into idolatry? Though the secular team saw it as another ancient site, the discovery matched the biblical narrative so perfectly that the parallels were too compelling to ignore. Secular researchers stunned. As the researchers analyzed the site, they found more evidence that seemed to corroborate the biblical story. What was initially dismissed as coincidence started to become undeniable. High-resolution imaging, carbon dating, and detailed geographical analysis showed that the stone structure and its surroundings fit the biblical description of the golden calf incident almost to the letter. One of the researchers, a self-proclaimed atheist, later admitted, "We came here to debunk myths, but now everything we thought we knew is being turned upside down. We can't explain what we found." This was no longer just a site of historical interest. The findings were shaking the foundations of everything these researchers believed about the Bible and its historical accuracy. Their initial skepticism had transformed into genuine confusion as they struggled to reconcile their discoveries with their previously held beliefs.
The scorched summit, but the most baffling part of this discovery was yet to come. Satellite imaging revealed something even more remarkable. The summit of the mountain wasn't just blackened. It appeared to have been scorched, not by fire, but by something far more intense and controlled. The kind of heat that would suggest divine intervention, like what is described in Exodus 19:18, when the mountain was covered in smoke as the Lord descended upon it in fire. No volcanic residue, no signs of natural fires, just an inexplicable burn, one that perfectly matched the biblical description of the mountain's encounter with God. This discovery left the researchers and the scientific community stunned. What could have caused such an event in the heart of a desert with no explanation in nature? The stone markers. As if this wasn't enough, the team found something even more curious at the base of the mountain. Rows of stone markers, neatly arranged in a line, stretching across the desert floor. The stones formed a clear boundary, and the layout seemed intentional, not random. The significance of this discovery became apparent when researchers realized it matched the description in Exodus 19:12, when God commanded Moses to set boundaries around the mountain, warning the Israelites not to approach or touch the holy ground. The discovery of these stone markers, so perfectly aligned with the biblical account, added another layer of credibility to the hypothesis that this mountain was, indeed, the true Mount Sinai, the Saudi government's response. With each new discovery, the mountain's significance grew. The Saudi government, once very secretive about the region, began to take notice. Surveillance cameras were installed around the site, and fences were erected, effectively restricting access to the area. The government's sudden interest raised suspicions. What were they hiding? Why were they so suddenly protective of a site that had been relatively unknown? Some speculate that the government recognized the site's religious significance, something that might stir up controversy with both Islamic and Jewish communities, especially since it seems to validate biblical events in a region considered sacred by Christians and Jews. The global impact. The implications of this discovery are far-reaching. If this is indeed the true Mount Sinai, it would not just change the understanding of biblical geography, it could potentially rewrite the entire narrative of the Exodus story itself. The Bible's historical accuracy would no longer be questioned merely as allegory or myth. Real physical evidence would support one of the most important events in religious history. And yet, despite the mounting evidence, many scholars and institutions are reluctant to accept these findings. Why? The truth might undermine decades of accepted academic research and long-held beliefs, making it difficult for the academic community to admit they may have been wrong all along. The unanswered question. As the world turns its attention to this new discovery, one question remains. Why is this site being kept so secret? Why are researchers going silent? And why is the Saudi government placing so many restrictions on the area? Could it be that the world is finally being forced to confront a truth that has been buried for centuries? A truth that once revealed could alter the course of religious and historical understanding forever. The mystery of Jabel Alaw is just beginning to unfold. As more evidence comes to light, the question remains, what will be the next shocking discovery that will force us to rethink everything we've ever known. Stay tuned. The past is not dead. It's buried, waiting to be uncovered.